Hi, I'm Rick Albert, and welcome to The Key to the City of Angels, the podcast where we unlock the secrets of Los Angeles real estate. With over 300 real estate deals under my belt, I've seen it all, from house hacking strategies that build wealth to helping clients close multi-million-dollar deals in one of the most competitive markets in the world. Every week, I'll bring you expert insights, market trends, and inspiring success stories to help you navigate the LA real estate scene. Whether you're a first-time buyer, an investor, or just curious about what it takes to thrive in the City of Angels, this podcast is your guide to making smarter decisions and achieving your goals. So grab your keys. It's time to unlock your path to prosperity in Los Angeles real estate. Rick Albert here with another amazing episode of The Key to the City of Angels. I have Brian Bradley of BTB Legal. We're going to talk about asset protection, LLCs, hybrid trusts, because one of the big questions I see a lot is like, how do I protect myself from getting sued? But then there's always all these misconceptions. So Brian, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Rick, for having me on. This is going to be a fun topic. We might geek out a little bit, but I'll try to make it understandable and not
Appreciate it.
legally, for people. But it is a critical conversation, especially now, and we're in a moment in time where the legal, financial, and our political systems are just like shifting really fast, and most people aren't prepared for what's coming. So this episode is really important. It's necessary, and especially a lot of these misconceptions that I think we're going to blow up.
Yeah, for sure. So for starters, how did you get into this space? Like what
Yeah,
made you
so
want to be passionate about this versus injury attorney?
Yeah, I don't think I wanted to be an attorney. It was just something I came across. I was an injured college athlete, and I thought I was going to go to the Navy SEALs and blow things up and have some fun. And
Okay.
my mom was like, "No, you're really good with logic. You're really good with philosophy. Like, why don't you just try 1 year of law school?" And when I got into, I was either going to go to law school, I got accepted, or I was going to go in, and I had a direct path to the SEALs. And my uncle at the time, who was in the military, like in special forces, listen, like you're really young coming out of college. Like, why don't you just try law school for 1 year? If you hate it, we're always here for you, but at least just give it a try. And I just fell in
Yeah.
love with it. And then I was working at the DA's office. California went on a hiring freeze in 08, 09, and I had to find something to do. And that wasn't criminal law related in the state because they weren't hiring at the moment because there was no money. So I got into asset protection from the litigation side of the law, which is a little bit different. Like it's not like people from estate planning. And I wasn't drafting theoretical strategies, right? Like I was dealing with the aftermath in court of people just like losing everything, families, business owners, doctors, real estate investors just losing lawsuits, not because like what they set up, they weren't working hard, but it was because they were misled by advisors who gave them just like generic, incomplete advice and strategies. And I don't mean misled intentionally. Like I think it's just like a knowledge gap that they just didn't have. And a lot of people don't realize this, but asset protection is not taught in law school. Like it's not on the bar
Hmm.
exam. It's not part of most law firms' daily practice. So what you get instead are just business attorneys or estate planners or CPAs dabbling in this space and giving like advice like just form an LLC. And that's just where we have a really bad, serious gap in knowledge. And it's really you're purchasing a false sense of security. And so most of my clients come to me after that point in time, and then I'm
Okay.
having to fix their situation. I just kept hearing the same recycled advice. Just form an LLC, get insurance, have a revocable living trust. You're good to go. And then I know you're based out in California. Oh, California, go get a Nevada asset protection trust and just use a different state's trust. That will be just fine. You're good to go. And then they find out once they get sued, it all unravels. And I got tired of hearing and dealing with these sob stories. So I did a lot of time researching just what actually works. If I'm a trial lawyer, I'm a top trial lawyer, what would I not want to come against? And it was these layered out systems with LLCs, limited partnerships, and very strong hybrid asset protection trust that when they all are married together, give you this beautiful overall structure that we're going to break down during our talk. But I think the big thing is to understand is not all lawyers practice the same area of law, just not all medical doctors, right? You're not going to have your general family doctor do brain surgery. Your
Right.
cousin Frank, the business attorney, is not an asset protection attorney. So we got to go and find the right specialist for the right area. And we have to make sure that the asset protection strategy is done before you're getting sued. And I'm going to stress that a lot probably during this talk because you have no idea how many times people are like, I listened to you talk. I'm getting sued now. What can you do for me? And it's like nothing because you're currently getting sued. This needed to be done beforehand.
Okay, and then I guess we should probably say, look, this is all general advice, nothing specific, all of that for some of this. But all right, so let's dive in. So let's go into, I'm interested in getting the LLC set up. I'm interested in doing all this stuff because my hobby of buying property is now becoming a side
Yeah.
business. So what steps should they be considering at that point?
Yeah. So first, I think we need to break, it would be like breaking down like what even is asset protection, because I even get a lot of
Good
times like,
call.
I want to set up an asset protection structure and I don't want to pay taxes. Well, that's completely illegal. That's not asset protection, that's tax avoidance. And so the starting point first, when I talk to people, is just let's identify and clean up what this weird term asset protection even means and what it's actually not, which is really important. And asset protection is simply this: is placing a legal barrier between your assets and like the potential creditor, the person suing you. Again, like big cap words here, before there's a problem. That's it. It's just like a safe. You're going to want to put your guns and your gold or your precious gems in them. You're not going to leave them out sitting on the front porch. You're going to lock them up. The same thing with your investments, like your properties, your real estate investments, your bank accounts, your stock portfolios, your equity in your home. Like you want to place them behind legal barriers and out of your personal name so that they're not going to be easily attached with a lien or a lawsuit. And on all these investment shows, right, like people are always talking about freedom and really financial freedom a lot. And then we're entering this like information era, right? We have nation states, regulators, and even civil courts are starting to turn predatory. And it's really not by accident, it's by necessity. And so this is really what we're starting to protect about. It's not just the person who's suing you. We have to protect you against the system that's now against you. And
Mm,
this has to be set up again beforehand. And what it's not, like I said before, it's not about hiding money. That's illegal. It's not about dodging taxes. That's illegal. You're taxed on your worldwide income as a US person. Like even if you moved, I get this a lot. I'm going to Puerto Rico for crypto and I don't want to pay taxes. That's illegal. You're going to have to pay your taxes on your capital gains. Like even if you're Elon Musk and you're mining asteroids in space for trillions of dollars, right? Like you're still going to be paying taxes on that. So it's not about deception, it's about defense. So smart, legal, court-proven defense. And so again, it's not about hiding, it's not about avoiding taxes, it's about protecting you from third-party creditors trying to take your assets through the through the legal system.
And just so we're clear, because I always had someone tell me, like, look, if you screw up something on your taxes and you get audited, like, fine, there might be some fees, you might have to pay stuff. If you're not reporting income, that can be potential jail time. Like, it's a criminal
Correct.
act when people get paid under the table and they're not reporting the income, they're not reporting rental income coming in, all that kind of stuff.
Correct. And there's an entire page devoted to this to the IRS website where it's like trust scams. Just like type in
Mm,
irs.com, like trust scams, and then the page will pop up. If you talk to an attorney or an advisor and they say, set up this trust for asset protection and never pay taxes again, run away from them very fast because that is straight up going to get, they're not going to be the ones going to jail. You're the one signing the
right.
document and the paperwork. Like they're just creating a scam to take your money. And then you're going to be the one left on the hook for the IRS saying, hey, you put this $10 million and you never declared it. Now pay us back all the 10 million plus all the back taxes that you owe or go to jail. And that's
Right.
on you. Right. So we got to
Right.
really be clear about this is not about hiding or avoid paying taxes. I'm a big fan of using the tax code as a treasure map for wealth preservation.
Sure.
Legally, that's a legal way of doing it, working with your CPA, your wealth managers. But creating a trust, even the offshore stuff we do, is not about hiding assets to not pay taxes.
Yeah, this is all about if you were to get sued, are you personally protected to make sure your other assets are protected? That's the idea.
Correct. That's the idea. And then the big part of it again is it has to be done before the lawsuit. And there's this great Supreme Court case, 2010 case, SEC versus Solo, that came out. And there's two really good teaching points in this case, if you don't mind me breaking it down
Go for it.
real quick. Yeah. Mr. Solo was nailed by the SEC for fraudulent trading scheme. So just think like bad man doing bad things. And then afterwards, they hit him with a judgment, and then he transferred his assets into his wife's offshore Cook Island trust to shield them after the lawsuit, after the judgment. So this is just straight up fraud. And the
Yeah.
court saw through it and they held him in civil contempt of court. But here's an interesting twist with this case. The offshore trust still worked. So the assets were still safe. The SEC couldn't touch the assets, but he was still held in
Mm.
civil contempt of court. And so here's the learning lesson from this one case. One is that offshore trusts are incredibly powerful if they're done right and if they're done beforehand. And that's what the second part is, like the timing matters. So Mr. Solo was held in contempt of court, not because of the trust structure, but because he acted after the judgment. He was late to the game. He did this after the lawsuit started, after the facts, after the judgment. So it's like trying to go buy car insurance after you had the accident to cover the accident. It doesn't work that way. So the big takeaway is always that whatever you're going to set up, even if it's just like little LLCs, have to be done before the lawsuit hits. We can't add strength and layers after the lawsuit. Your system's locked in at that point.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So then at what point, so let's say you're setting up the LLC. So okay, so like one of the biggest things I've heard is in theory, you should have an LLC for every property. But then it's okay, but on a practical basis, that doesn't really work.
Yeah. And the reality side of it is this. A lot of it is dependent on where you are. All right. So
Okay.
if your property and the cost of property. So ideal world, yes, one property, one LLC. Right.
Yeah.
That's ideal. Separate out risk, have all those LLCs flow up the tunnel into a management company, put the trust on top of that. And in a reality world, most of the time, let's say you have 10 rental properties. They're in California. California properties are expensive. Generally, you're going to have a lot of more equity than you would in like an Ohio property that's worth $50,000 total. You might have one California rental property that has $1 million in equity in it.
Right.
That situation, we have to look at how much equity are we protecting and how many units do we have. It might say, yes, $1 million property needs to go into its own LLC because you don't want $1 million property affecting another $1 million property or a fourplex affecting a single family, if that makes sense, right?
Hmm.
So now let's do the other side. Let's say you're a California resident. California property is very expensive. I own 10 properties in like Tennessee and Ohio. They're all low value. Then we can start adding, okay, let's take our Tennessee properties. If we can keep the equity below 500,000 or then 4 units or 4 doors in one LLC, let's put those 4 in one LLC, get a little bit of stretch out of the LLC. Let's put the Ohio ones in an Ohio LLC, cap it at 500, 600,000 in equity. Let's try not to put more than 4 units or 4 doors in one LLC. But we do not want to say, let's just stuff all 10 properties in one LLC and overload it with risk, right? Because if one asset explodes, they're all tainted. And so we want to separate out some risk as much as we can, but utilize and get some stretch out of the LLCs as much as possible.
And when you mean by equity, you are factoring in if there's a loan on the property,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not looking at total value, right? Okay, what's the total value of the property? It's $1 million. Okay, do you have a mortgage on it? Yes. All right. So how much equity, if you were to sell the house, do you have in it? 100,000 in equity. That's what we're protecting is the equity, because at the end of the day, if someone were to sue you, that's what they have access to.
Got it. So that's really what this is all about. So if someone sues because of one property, let's say you had a trip and fall on a little house in Ohio, but then you have the $1 million home in California, I can go after that house too.
Right. It depends on how bad the injury is. Like someone can slip and fall and then they hit their head on an edge and then they crack their skull open. And then now
Hmm.
they're a vegetable state for their whole life. And now you're in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit because of some stupid slip and fall and loss of income and all of that. And so
Hmm.
you're in this multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And let's say it was an Ohio property. If we took an Ohio property, mixed it with a Tennessee property, mixed it with a California property, everything right off the bat is up for grabs. So if we put them in the right buckets, Ohio, Tennessee, California, at least we separated the risk out. Now the attorney suing you has to say, these are all extensions of yourself. I have to start piercing into these LLCs. And then that's where the next layers come in, like management companies. And then let's say those get pierced, the big guns asset protection trust come into play to where you're a radical judge who hates you, you're losing every motion, or maybe it's a straight up valid claim and you're
Yeah.
going to lose and you're going to lose big. All right, what do we do in that situation? That's where we got to get the equity and the assets out of a US jurisdictional reach. And that's where like offshore components come into play.
What do you mean by like offshore? Like you're talking about like Cayman Islands?
No, like Cayman, yeah, theoretically, yeah, but really it'd be like the Cook Islands is the best. Caymans, Belize, those ones are considered tax havens because that's where a lot of people are like stuffing their money to hide from the government from paying taxes on, that's illegal, and they're generally red
Sure.
flagged because of that. And so then you would probably get audited. The gold standard for asset protection trust is the Cook Islands. It has nothing to do with taxes. They're tax neutral. It's just the strongest jurisdiction that has this magic word called like statutory non-recognition, which means they can completely ignore any country's court orders or judgments in the world, including the US. And there's even cases up to our Supreme Court that are like, yeah, these are really frustrating and they suck for us, but they're completely legal. And so
Hmm.
you're not creating these trusts to avoid paying taxes. You're just saying, all right, yep, I have a valid judgment against me, but now my assets are owned and held by my Cook Island Trust. If you want to sue me, you got to sue me down there, and your judgment in the US is completely worth nothing.
So if you have assets in the Cook Islands and someone wants to go after those assets, they have to do it where the assets are located, which is why they have to go to the Cook Islands.
No, so they would sue you in, let's just say it's a California case.
Sure.
California property, someone gets hurt in California, they would sue you in California because that's where the asset's at, that's where you're at, that's where the jurisdiction will lie. Your assets are owned into this asset protection plan that has like this Cook Island trust component to it. Once we
Okay.
trigger the trust, it is now purely foreign, which means great, you can get your California US based judgment against me, but to execute it and take a penny from me, how are you going to, you have to get the money out of my Cook Island trust in my bank account. That's now controlled by my Cook Island offshore trustee, who you have no jurisdictional control over. And so there's no way to extract the judgment. And the Cook Islands laws are you have to be able to sue them within 1 year of statute of limitations. So by the time they even know you have a Cook Island trust, it's already ran. They have to prove the case beyond a
Oh,
reasonable
okay.
doubt, like the murder standard, the 99% sure standard. You can't take your US attorneys with you. If you lose, you pay, which is like a really big deal because if you have to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, it's a civil case, like you're going to lose. And then
Yeah.
you have to front the entire court cost plus fly in a judge from New Zealand. So they have these insane superpower statutory hurdles that they set up, which then puts the leverage back in your hands to settle the case literally for pennies on the dollar. And the great thing is like the IRS hasn't pierced it, the SEC hasn't pierced it. They're still the strongest trust in the world today. And so that's how these types of trusts are set up to play is saying, great, you can get your judgment against me, but even if the judgment is executed against me, you're still never going to receive a penny on me. My offer is a penny on the dollar. Good, settle this case, goodbye, go away.
Interesting. But this is for people who have like millions,
You would
right?
think
Like the average consumer who might have a little rinky-dink house in Ohio is not going to necessarily go out of
yeah.
their way for the Cook Islands.
So the average profile, I would never recommend purely foreign. Like there's just
Mhm.
reasons not to do it. It's just way overkill for 99.9% of society. And it's
Sure.
too expensive and the mandatory disclosures. But that's why you hybrid the trust together, which we
Okay.
can break. I mean, we're on it now. We might as well just
Sure. Let's do
break
it.
it down. So you got the purely foreign, right? We discussed the Cook Islands. And then we have a domestic option, like domestic US based trust. The difference is the US based ones are cheaper. They're easier to maintain. No IRS disclosures, no FACTA disclosures. There's no IRS disclosures whatsoever on a US domestic trust. The benefit is cost. They're just cheaper to utilize. The problem is they're just not effective. Specifically in like California, we'll use California as an example. California doesn't recognize self-settled spendthrift legislation. So you can't even create a California asset protection trust because they don't exist. The state doesn't recognize them. And
Hmm.
not many states in the US do. Only like half of them do. And so what California residents used to do is run off to Nevada and create a Nevada asset protection trust. 2012, there was a case, Kilker versus Steelman. And the court said, listen, we're tired of California residents running off to another state and using another state's asset protection trust. We don't recognize them. You're not a resident of those states. We are not doing this anymore. And so they pierced them and stopped that. And so the only way for a California resident to actually create an asset protection trust for it to work is to use something offshore. But they're, like we talked about, like way overkill for most people.
Sure.
So the IRS said, listen, we understand you have a Cook Island trust. We don't care, Rick. Congratulations, good for you. But to make your life easy on the annual maintenance and the disclosures, there's a code section 7701 that says as long as we name you as the trustee and a state in the US as a location, for tax purposes and simplicity, we'll just consider it a domestic trust. So it's combining the best of both. Take the offshore Cook Island trust strength, have the IRS classify it domestically for tax purposes and simplicity. And then, God forbid, if you ever get sued for a doomsday lawsuit, Now we can use this strength in the back pocket because we have our offshore trust already set up. And that's how we combine the best of both. So if you're in California, that's the only way you can create an asset protection trust that actually work. And then the benefit is we were talking about cost. The cost brings it down, like by hybriding it, the cost is lower. The annual
Mhm.
maintenance fee is a lot lower. So the general profile of a person who's using these types of trusts are around 1 million of exposed equity. So it's like the doctor who's investing in real estate, the pure
Mm.
real estate investor who now has 4, 6 properties. They might be exposed in different states. My favorite types of clients are like the nurses and cops who self-funded their retirement and they have a bunch of real estate that they invested in over 20 years, but that's their retirement and their legacy. One lawsuit can clean that out. So you would think for 10 million plus, but it's
Yeah.
around 850 to 1.2 million, where you find about 80% of the client profile for this.
And then on the lawsuit side, is there a certain profile that you tend to see where more of these lawsuits happen, like bigger apartment complexes versus single family house, or does it not
No,
really matter?
it doesn't really matter because a lot of it comes from mixed risk, right? Like it could be your profession plus the property. If you're a doctor and you're getting sued for malpractice, and this has become you is over coverage lawsuits. So you're covered through the hospital for 2 million, but this is a $4 million lawsuit now. And then you have your umbrella policy on top of it, but what we're seeing now is they don't want to pay, or they'll pay and then countersue you to get the money back. And so we're seeing a lot,
Interesting.
yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. And on real estate, it's very risky to own, but it's also one of it's the most heavy litigated areas of law because a lot of deals fall apart. And so then if you're found a deal, made an offer, found a different deal, neglected, broke the contract, then you're going to get countersued for the value of the deal. There's just a lot of lawsuits that happen and it's generally like millions of dollars in law, $1 million lawsuit on just a single family investment.
Got it. Now, what has really made all this so freaking difficult? Like this whole process.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like decades ago, someone slipped and fell. It's okay. It was a rainy day. You slipped and fell. But like
It's,
now, it just seems like
yeah.
things have gotten so complicated. What in the legal system has changed?
Yeah, it's a great
It's all
question.
happened.
A lot's changed over the last 30, 40 years. Part of it is law firm advertising is a big part of it.
Mm,
Attorneys weren't out advertising like this, and we didn't have a victim class of politics where let's just legislate out responsibility for your own actions. And then we became really into this Robin Hood economic society of punish the producing class, take, redistribute through the legal system. So now we have a very predatory legal system. And that's what we're really combating is not the individual person suing you. It's this system that has been created since the 60s, really, when we started allowing for law firm advertising. And then most of the legislators that we elect in are attorneys. And we have this very
mm.
aggressive legal system now who favors lawsuits. And that's what we have to protect ourselves against. It wasn't like that in the past. Normally, people wouldn't sue. We weren't really sue happy. And now we're, especially in California, what is it? I think the average is 4.4 million lawsuits filed a year in California.
I thought you were gonna say per day, and I still would believe you.
No,
So,
yeah, just per
but
year, but I mean, it's insane.
yeah, but you're right. Like I'm thinking about like, all the personal injury billboards I see when you're driving down the freeway,
Yeah.
or were you in an Uber or Lyft accident and it's like on a major street? Like I can imagine like little fender bender from an Uber accident. You look up and you see the billboard.
I had one client call in yesterday. They got resolved, but he was telling me, I'm like, what sparked this conversation today? What happened? Why now versus in 6 months from now? And I got in a fender bender. Literally, he sent me the picture of it. I was going 1 mile an hour, tapped the person's bumper behind me. There's a picture. You can't even see any damages. The cops even wrote no damages. They tried to sue him for $1 million. It was just insane.
It's interesting. We always see a lot of like celebrities where they have a personal chauffeur.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to someone who's well off. He started from nothing. And we talked about that. I was like, yeah, you have these celebrities and who have all these other drivers. And you don't understand. By the driver being the one driving, if there's an accident, it could be on the driver.
Yeah.
They're not the ones behind the wheel. It's a liability.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like an insurance policy to have someone else drive your own car nowadays.
Yeah. And then imagine then if that celebrity got mangled in the car in a car accident, then the celebrity would then sue the driver. It's just like this never ending lawsuit mess that we're living in. And just because We have no tort reform. Like our biggest solution for this wouldn't be having to run off and create all these elaborate asset protection structures. It would be create some damn tort reform so not everybody's just easily running off to sue everybody all the time. But that's just not how our legal system is set up. It's for everybody to have fair access. And when you have that, you have predatory attorneys and people just filing lawsuits for a payday.
Yeah. So then why are these lawsuits like for some of these LLCs? Because you keep talking about piercing the veil and how you can get through them. But like the whole point is that it's supposed to protect you. So why aren't they as strong as people think?
Yeah, so let's break down. Like, this is a big misconception. So we can break this down into maybe like jurisdiction, because that's a big miss one.
Hmm.
And then like another one I think is like this misconception between business law and tort law. And then we'll wrap it up with that. I think that will answer the question. But the myth with LLC is that everyone thinks it's like a one size fits all silver bullet. And it never used to
Sure.
be like this. Like people miss first word, first letter, limited. Like they tell you this straight up in the name. And but don't get me wrong, like I use LLCs, like they're at the very bottom of the rung, but we use them to separate out risk. But what's the actual role of LLCs in LLCs are foundational. So think of them like the base layer of clothing on a cold day, like that first thin shirt of
The
on
thermal.
a body armor. Yeah. So it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So if you think one LLC is going to shield you from $1 million lawsuit, you're walking into a winter storm just wearing that t-shirt. So we use LLCs to separate out risk. Anything with a key or requires insurance or can go boom, they belong in an LLC. That's the base. And then we layer a management entity like limited partnerships, and then the outer shell, like rainy coat, which is the asset protection trust. Because real protection comes from structures that and scale and layered out like that, not from a document that we pull off of LegalZoom or a generic like Google template. And this next part is where I think people start really getting confused is, and we touched upon it a little bit, but I never actually explained it. Like, where do we go to set this stuff up at? Do we go to
Sure.
Wyoming, Delaware, Nevada, Texas? Some of you might understand this word is called like jurisdiction shopping. Where do we set these in? And the real question really is like, what are you trying to protect against? And what state actually controls the assets? And so here's an example. A California resident forms a Wyoming LLC and thinks they're magically adopting Wyoming law. But if that LLC owns California real estate and you're paying California franchise tax on that out-of-state Wyoming LLC because you're a California resident and by law you're required to register it as an out-of-state business entity, you've just domesticated or converted your Wyoming LLC in California. And if you get sued, it's California law that now applies. And this was actually made crystal clear in a 2023 Supreme Court case. It's called Mallory versus Norfolk. The court ruled in this situation that states can assert jurisdiction over any companies that are registered to do business in that state, regardless of where it's formed. So you can't just go and buy another state's better legal protections and bring them into a hostile legal environment like California and expect them to actually travel with you. It just doesn't work that way. And here's where even some lawyers get this wrong, where I was talking about like business law versus tort law. They confuse business disputes and contract law with tort liability, meaning personal injury and negligence. But contract law and tort law, they're not the same. There's completely different areas of law. And we're just, you get a lot of attorneys trying to be cute and combine different areas of law into different strategies and use clients as guinea pigs to see if they work. And if you don't mind, like I can actually break this down so your listeners get a clear understanding of this difference
Go
of that.
for it.
Yeah. So you can write choice of law provisions and venue clauses into your contracts all day long. That's just standard, right? Like we see them in everything. But if someone slips and falls on your rental property and then cracks their skull open, that's tort law, damage law, right? Meaning personal injury. That is not a business dispute between like you and I trying to sue each other because we're dissolving our business, right? So state laws apply in personal injury claims. No LLC's operating agreement is going to save you from a negligence claim. And if your LLC is sloppy or undercapitalized, commingled funds, you don't follow formalities, the courts are going to pierce it. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And The other really big, I think, misconception just with LLCs is because we see a lot of promoters and salesmen, but not attorneys talking about this, is like the last 3 years, like how many times have you heard people talk about anonymity and like Wyoming anonymous LLCs? Is I can't
Mm,
have a conversation with anybody calling in except like, can I have an anonymous Wyoming LLC? They're treating it like it's the holy grail. And it's just go create a Wyoming LLC and use a land trust and then hide your ownership and no one will ever find you. Just disappear and ghost a lawsuit. No, that's wrong. That's not how
Let's
this
just dodge
works.
responsibility. Got it.
Yeah, no. First of all, the second a lawsuit is filed, you're in the system and you're going to be required to appear. You got served. Congratulations. You appear in court. And once that happens, the discovery process begins and everything comes out during discovery. And once you're in court, the only way to stay hidden at that point in time is to lie. And that's called perjury. And people go to jail for committing perjury. So you're the
Yeah.
weak link to that, like secrecy or hiding assets. So privacy is good. I like privacy. We can have built-in privacy through limited partnerships and trust. But I want to be really clear on this one point. Privacy is not protection. And I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Privacy does not equal protection. Privacy helps reduce harassment, right? Like, I hate you. I'm going to go egg your
Mm,
house. You're a horrible landowner. It doesn't block judgments. And we have a lot of case law backing this up. Courts have ruled on this. There's Arbor Place LP versus Encore Opportunities in 2002. Block Communications versus Pounds, 2015, In re Downey, In re Kwok, and a lot of other ones. And so these decisions all say the same thing. If your structure is weak, it will collapse. And so the right thing is just create an LLC where the asset is at, because that's where the lawsuit's going to happen. Add in a management company and then add in the trust on top of it. And then you're properly layered out. But don't think you're just going to be able to disappear and ghost a lawsuit.
and I think I know the answer, but what would be like the cost of all this? Because that's been the biggest pushback. They're like,
Yeah.
the cost of setting this up, plus the filing of the taxes, none of the properties are even going to work at that point. Like the numbers just don't work just for the potential of a lawsuit.
Yeah, and that's where I tell people is you have to scale in and we have to assess what is your risk, where are we at. If you're just saying, hey, Brian, I'm just starting out investing and I have one property, I would not be saying, let's create an LLC, a limited
Right?
partnership, and let's get a hybrid Cook Island trust, pay me $31,000 and we're good to go. That's what you're not ready for a Taj Mahal yet. You're at, I need an LLC and insurance. That's where you're starting at. So generally, like LLCs by law firms, you're going to be looking at $1,500 for a decent LLC. Then you add management companies, you're going to probably be looking at 7,500. When you start talking about hybrid trust and strong trust, just the trust alone, generally $23,000, $25,000 for that type of trust. Where
Hmm.
you are in that picture and that scale just depends on what the client's profile looks like. So
Sure.
you got to have a conversation and say, what's your job? What are you doing? Oh, I'm a OBGYN and I have 6 rental properties and 2 of those are commercial. Yeah, we're gonna go hybrid trust, limited partnerships, and LLCs. Like, your risk is off the chart and you're a high mark. If I'm a nurse and I have 2 rental properties, we're gonna probably just say, let's start with an LLC and insurance. As you add more, we'll scale and grow with you. Then the management company, then you scale more, your visibility gets more, then we add the trust. And if people are just price shopping, I think that's very dangerous. I think you need to
Sure.
assess the right level of protection for where you're at. But if your sole decision is cost, realize you get what you pay for. And that lawsuit that you were saying, like, yeah, I saved $800 on this, look at that. And then you lose
Everything.
$400,000 from a lawsuit and everything. Was it really worth the 800 or $1,000 that you saved? So we got to really put things in perspective.
Sure. Would it matter? Because California is very litigious, but other states aren't.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not going to say like the typical attorney word, it depends. Because they're
That's like your
actually,
guys'
they're
favorite
really,
word. Like that should be tattooed, by
right,
the way.
like, it
It
depends.
depends.
No, but for example, I'm going to use Florida and Texas because everyone thinks these are amazing states for asset
Yeah.
protection. The only thing that they're great for is they have amazing homestead exemptions. That's it. Otherwise, they're really bad asset protection states. They don't have self-settled spendthrift legislation. You can't be your own beneficiary. So we actually have to utilize these hybrid trusts even in asset protection friendly states. And then we
Mm,
even have other states that do have self-settled spendthrift legislation. The problem with those are Yeah, you can create a domestic trust in those states, but in like Bately versus Mordison, in Ray Hubbard, Dale versus Dale, those are states that actually have these statutes. All of them got pierced because the
Mm,
judges said, my public policy, I don't like this. I don't agree with the choice of law that we're using. I'm piercing it based on public policy reasons, total loss of assets. So I don't know very many law firms or that do this at a high level that are using anything purely domestic just because the law is not on the side anymore.
got it. It'd be interesting to see just like generally like which states have the most lawsuits, like in
California,
general,
Texas, New York, Florida.
and then which ones have the least.
Think of the flyover states.
Got it. So then that could be I'm just thinking like it'd be interesting to study that versus like landlord
Yeah.
tenant
So
laws, see what kind of correlations there are.
yeah, I generally wouldn't be recommending and setting this up for if you're like Iowa, Kansas, like any of the
Alabama,
or like
whatever.
it's not something that generally like the culture is not that interested in it.
Right.
Their economy is completely different. But if you're looking at East Coast, West Coast, and South, where you got high risk, high professions, a lot of investments going on, that's where this type of protection comes into play. But the people in the flyover states or like the other states, yeah, you should probably get an LLC and insurance, maybe a management company. We may not just be talking about the big guns, the trust. We just leave those off the table.
Got it. And it's also interesting that you brought up that it also depends on what you do personally as a profession. Because I guess if you do OBGYN, you also don't want your company to be a target.
A lot of people don't think about also, it's not just a matter of malpractice, it's a matter of I did a lot of employment law litigation when I started out. Wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination. You have so many things just from an employee standpoint that you can potentially get sued from. So if you're like a doctor and you own, or a business owner in general, and you own the business and you have employees, just from the business aspect of it, you have to consider the risk on that, not just what I do I am a lawyer. I can get sued for malpractice, but if I have a practice and I have 10 employees and I own my building, there's just a risk from that right there in itself.
So each one should be somehow delegated. Because the other thing I've heard was he's like, look, I've had LLCs. Every time my LLC's been sued, I've always been named individually.
You do that because you try to plan. This is what I did. You always, when you're a plaintiff's attorney, try to name people individually because you're trying to avoid federal court, because you get
Okay.
better judgments out of state court. So the
Mm.
attorneys will always research who's the owner of the LLC, sue the LLC and the named owner of it. So sue Rick, also add him onto the pleadings because we want to get out of federal court.
So it's a
It's
strategy.
a strategy because state courts give better judgments.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember years ago. So one of my first jobs was actually buying properties at the courthouse steps, like the
Yeah.
foreclosures. This was like 2010-ish.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to go through the evictions, but sometimes the occupants will try to sue, and then they try to sue everybody under the sun.
Yeah.
So they tried to sue, the company I worked for because we're the ones who bought it. Then they tried to sue the bank. Then they tried to sue all these people. And I remember going through mediation, and it's like they're one attorney versus five.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just
And that's just
I
like
don't
a
think the odds are in
shotgun.
their favor.
That's just a shotgun method. Like we don't know who deep pockets are yet, but we know
Right.
there's all these people here. Just list them all, and it'll get weeded out during the process.
Or they all split the cost
Correct.
of the settling. Okay, the guy wants 10 grand. There's
Yeah.
five. Let's say you pitch in 2 grand, it'll be cheaper than attorney fees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that was the one thing I learned from attorneys is that it's expensive to be.
Yeah. It is. And then it's what I was gonna say with it is also like you have a lot of attorneys who understand the game and they'll find like cases they shouldn't even file just to force a payday like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, stretch the facts. We can get past a motion for summary judgment. The case is crap, but we'll get 40 out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, when I see all these like settlements, it's
Yeah.
like that's the key word there is settlement. It's not that they
Yeah.
won the
No,
case,
they just want
they
the
just
they just
got
want to get
money.
the settlement. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so then once we get through all of this, we talk about like different states, like what are we missing? Because the average mom and pop investor may own 4 properties. I have
Hmm.
clients that are really blowing up their portfolios because
Yeah.
they're now starting to explore out-of-state options. That's
Yeah.
really where these LLC conversations are starting to happen more.
Yeah. And so what you want to do with the conversation there is, okay, you got a mom and pop solo business right here, and you got 4 rental properties, and maybe like you're going into some other states. That's really where that management company comes into play is let's
Uh-huh.
clean this up from a tax perspective. Instead of having 4 or 5 LLCs that we got to do separate K1s for, that starts adding expenses to it. But if we have all these LLCs owned and managed by one limited partnership or one management company, now all the tax returns go up and into the limited partnership. So it's just one tax filing. So it helps clean them up from a tax perspective. And then you just do a one-page attachment. It's called a 1065. And then that's it. So it's really simple. And then the trust owns, I would recommend and say, if you're a single business owner and you have 4 properties and you're investing in different states and your primary, I would say they probably would fit the bill for a hybrid trust at that point in time because there's a lot of risk. And then they're probably at that age where one lawsuit, like they're not going to rebuild and survive from that. That's the other aspect that has to come into it. If you're telling me I'm 50 years old, I'm self-employed, I have my company in 4 properties, and we are self-retiring. If one lawsuit was $1 million and you lost all of that at age 45 plus, how are you going to rebuild that? You're not going to anymore. So we really need to lock down their legacy.
So you bring up something that's interesting because it's funny because I was talking to my mom about this when we were talking about, she said, you should put a big chunk of money down on like a property. I said, if I'm your age, yes. But because you're right, they're gearing up toward retirement. But for me, I'm like, I have a better use of that money.
Yeah.
So when you're creating this huge structure, you're right. As you get older and you're actually winding down, you almost need more protection versus when
Yeah,
you're,
I think you do it at both ends because when you're winding up, like you're taking on more risk and leverage. So your visibility is more, but you are more naive. So you're going to make more errors. And
what? No,
more,
impossible.
right? Not having an accelerated learning curve. Yeah. No, and then, but at the same time, I don't know very many people. Once you pass that, like that first million, wealth accelerates fast.
Yeah,
And then when you get
I've
to
noticed that.
5, it accelerates even faster. And so you're doing more deals, but the deals are even bigger. And so, and then you start thinking about legacy. Oh, now I'm planning for my grandkids and my great grandkids. So what's the next 4 deals going to look like? So we got to scope that out as well. So I think no matter what age you're coming into it, it just is a matter of what do we have? What's the risk? What's the total net worth? And I'm always looking, what's the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan? And then that's how we structure these out. I maybe have had two, I've had 2 calls this week with people who have $30 million real estate portfolios and they just want to sell everything. But
Yeah.
I'm still going to say, we're going to do the hybrid trust no matter what we put it in because what are we going to do with the 30 million? Right. And what happens if you hit somebody with your car? So yeah, your risk profile went down from not having all the real estate, but you still have a huge mark on you. And then just from the negligence of your own life, or maybe you'll find a new venture or deal that you want to do. So that's going to invite risk right there. So we still have to lock the assets and the liquidity down.
So this is not really about age or anything. This is really about what is your current net worth.
It really is. What's the net worth, and then what is your assets give you exposure to, and what you're doing with your daily life, like work or just like what you're doing. What is that? So I look at the net worth, I look at the risk exposure, and then we combine the two for a total risk profile, and then from there the recommendation comes.
Interesting. And then is there like a minimum net worth that you would look at that? Or is it just doesn't really matter? Anyone can sue anyone because
Anyone can sue it,
the
yeah.
person doesn't know.
They really don't. When I do my plaintiff work, like we do research on the person that like, hey, Rick hit me with his car. I'm like, all right, let me see what this guy has. And if I
Right.
find something that, okay, he's a business owner, has some assets, yeah, that seems like a good mark, can get some money out of this. Let's go forward with this. No attorney is just going to randomly sue someone that they don't think they can collect on because law firms are businesses. And so
Right.
we're not going to waste money on cases that we're not going to get a payout because then that's a quick way to go out of business and take your shingle off your door. So there has
Because
to
a
be.
lot of these attorneys are contingent on winning. That's how they get paid.
That's what contingency fee attorneys are. So if all I am doing is shelling out $50,000 per case to try to get 200,000 out of it, and I keep losing and losing, I don't even think you can sustain a year at that. And so that's when a lot of attorneys go out of business or go back into the bigger firms. So there is this game that you're playing of cutting out the legs from them from these higher levels. For what we do, the client profile with these fully integrated systems with the hybrid trust is 1 million of exposed net worth. And exposed and what's your equity? Take out the 401ks and IRAs, they're exempt, right? We take those out. And then what is it from properties? What is it from like your daily exposure from work? How much equity do we have? Are we protecting? And if you hit that 1 million mark and you have some sort of risk and exposure, that's where this strategy comes in. If you're below, that's when you start doing the little pieces like LLCs, limited partnerships, and then you just scale up to the big guns later on.
Got it. Okay, that all makes sense, right? So it just tailored to your
Correct.
you can even I think most people, and maybe I'm wrong, but like you can have an idea of your own risk profile, right? Like you can look and say, yeah, I work a W-2 job. It's not as risky, but if you're like, no, I'm self-employed, I have a big business, I'm
You
doing
would
well,
think
plus I have all these
so, but
properties.
people are really bad at self-identifying their own risk. And then people are also have a skewed definition of what high net worth or I made it money is, to where I'm not high worth, I only have 1 or 2 million. I'm like, yeah, but that person who's renting from you thinks that you are because you have $1 million, you're driving a BMW or a Mercedes, you own the building that they're renting from. So to them, you are rich. You may not feel that you worked your way up, but the definition realistically is 1 million or more of exposed net worth and some sort of risk. And a great example of this is you could be a new doctor straight out of residency who was still has all of your student loans to pay. So you're poor as dirt making some money, and then you were also made a bad decision and bought a BMW right afterwards, and you're rocketing down the freeway to work because you're late to get to the hospital in your white coat and you hit somebody. You are worthless, right? But you're in a BMW with a doctor's white coat on. They're going to see you as a rich doctor and you're going to get sued.
So the moral of the story is we should all drive beaters.
Correct.
Got
That's another story to tell. Right. Yeah.
it. And wear sweats.
Yeah.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, and then you talked about the asset protection trust. Most of the time we only talk about regular, I guess, revocable trust or
Yeah.
irrevocable trust. What is this difference?
Yeah, so there's a big difference. And this is like your final layer, right? Like we're talking about the clothing analogy and we're going out into a winter
Hmm.
storm. This is your heavy jacket when you're going out on like that winter ski trip and the weather got really bad. So we're putting on our weather jacket. And I always describe as think about trust like ice cream, right? Baskin Robbins 31 flavors, because people think the trust is a trust. I have a trust, I'm good to go. They're all the same, but they're not. Just like ice cream, you have different types of ice cream, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, right? So we break a few of these down. A revocable living trust. This is your basic estate planning tool. It's great for probate and avoiding probate, naming beneficiaries, your medical, your financial directives, but they offer literally zero protection against lawsuits. They're not designed to. They don't have the teeth. They don't have the statutes in them. It's just literally for medical directives, avoiding probate, who gets what, when, where, how, and why. Then you have the other common one in like investing. People hear about land trust. These are often used for privacy in real estate, but they don't protect you. Their strength only comes from the LLC that it's connected to, and we've already beat up LLCs and how limited they are, but it's just a privacy mechanism, not an actual adding extra protection to you. Then you hear about a lot of different types of trusts that are tax trusts, like Delaware Trust, generational wealth skipping trust, New York spousal trust. These are all types of different names, like same types of trust, different names. Their purposes are tax focused. They're not lawsuit focused. And then they usually can't be self-settled, which is a very critical portion for asset protection. So those are just how do I mitigate taxes, right? Like I want to pay less in
Hmm.
taxes. Those are specific types of trusts for that. Then enter the asset protection trust. And this is where we're starting to talk power from lawsuits. Asset protection trusts are what's called self-settled, irrevocable spendthrift trusts. So they're self-settled means it's created for you, by you, as your own beneficiary. So you're the trustee, the beneficiary, and the trustor. Irrevocable means its terms and its provisions are fixed and a judge can't force you to change it. So where your estate plan, right, is revocable, meaning like, yeah, I'm gonna probably change my mind over time.
Adding
Cute
kids,
Johnny, yeah.
whatever.
Cute Johnny, my grandkid, was awesome when he was a baby, and then 20 years later, he's cocaine Johnny in Vegas. I'm not going to give him
He's a
1 million.
dick. We want him out of the
Like,
well.
so
Out of the
we're gonna,
trust.
yeah, we're gonna change our mind a bunch of times, and then so we want to be able to revoke it. But if I can revoke it, then a judge can tell you to revoke it or hold you under civil contempt of court. That's where irrevocability comes in. So it's really important. Spendthrift provisions are what gives it actual teeth against creditors. And so those are the three things that we're looking at. And we talked about the problem is you can try to do all that domestically, but unfortunately, judges' superpower of public policy, they're just piercing them all over the place. And I already went through the case law
Mhm.
on that. And then like you got California, Kilker versus Steelman, Florida, same thing like Monette versus Brown, Texas courts, In re Blount, New York, Illinois, same thing. So you think that you might be protected by trying to go cheaper with domestic trust, just realize the case law is not there. It's an expensive learning experience. The purely foreign, most effective thing in the world by far, Cook Islands. It's just way overkill for most people. So that's why we want to hybrid it and combine the best of both worlds. But a trust is not a trust. Just to keep the analogy, ice cream, 31 flavors. We have to pick the right trust for the right reason, the right purpose.
Got it. Okay. This has been very educational because I know, like I said, we get these questions all the time because I do have investment properties, but then clients ask me, and I'm like, dude, first of all, you got to talk to an attorney.
Yeah.
But then, but then even a lot of what you talked about is like what I've heard too. It's like you set this stuff up, and then they go right through it, and
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like
I'll
it's
give it
almost it makes it very difficult.
it does. And I'll give it a quick other issue because I get this call a lot. Is like, I get so much conflicting advice and
Yeah.
information. I'm so confused. I don't understand. So to clean this up, one, realize there's a million ways to skin a cat. What's the goal?
Sure.
Two, a lot of places you're talking to, they're not law firms. They're legal solution providers. You're talking to a salesman. You're not actually talking to
Interesting. That's a good
like an
point.
attorney. You're just talking to a salesman, and then they say, "Oh, our attorneys do all the work on the back end." And then they're not going to be there for you. And those are, I equate to like insurance. They're not doing the layered high end stuff. Insurance, you cast a large net, right? In the
Hmm.
legal field of asset protection, what's the largest net that I can cast that most everybody can use? An LLC and a land trust. They're not going after big sharks. They're not going after high risk, high net worth individuals because that's a narrower pool that we're hunting in now. So they're just looking at generically what can we use for everything. And then you have very small firms like ours who do the whole landscape and also focus on the offshore stuff for the higher end protection. So there's more knowledge that we have to do, and there's a less knowledge that they have because it's not their client profile. So why are they going to waste their time doing that? And then you have to like what we go to is we were talking about before is we're just not taught this in law school. And I don't fault lawyers for this because you focus on what your firm's telling you to do when you get out, and that's your niche and that's your area. What I do
Yeah.
fault people on is then trying to out overreach where their expertise is for salesmanship and to close a client when sometimes it's like, hey, you're outside my scope. You should go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting because the real estate industry is very similar to that.
Yeah.
The to get your real estate license, low barrier to entry, and about 99% of what's on the exam you don't actually use.
Yeah. And law is
Uh,
just like learn as much general crap as you can to pass the bar exam. You'll learn law and how to be a lawyer once you get hired somewhere.
it'd be interesting for both categories. If there was like the general exam, but then if you wanted to practice certain law, then there was almost like sub bar
I wish they went
exams.
back to how it was back in the day of just intern with this judge or with this law firm and then just learn how to be a lawyer. And then when then
Oh,
take,
without going to having to go to law school.
yeah, it's okay, like great, I learned general law. Maybe just do it as a year or two course. Then you'll take the bar exam a year or two later, like after you interned with a firm or what somewhere for a year or two, show that you know how to actually be a lawyer and you like this field, and then take an exam, get your license, and then go and work.
That'd be interesting. You also,
Yeah.
even to your point of like, I know a couple people where like they went to law school and then they're not attorneys.
A lot of people because it's just like it's a grind. And then working at law firms, they're not nice. Like I when I went up, like the partners generally, I wasn't treated very nice. I know when I was at the firms by the owners when I was coming up, it was just you were ground really hard. I went to bed at 3 in the morning, got up at 6 to go to court in the morning, and yeah, it's definitely learning through you're getting thrown in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah. And it's such high risk.
Yeah, no,
Like you're dealing with big, like I'll tell you, some of my
yeah,
favorite clients have been attorneys
yeah.
because when it comes to negotiations, they tend to be very like, yeah, whatever. Because
Mhm.
they're so used to negotiating such
Yeah,
bigger deals that they're
yeah.
like, am I really going to fight over 5 grand?
No,
No,
for
I got
sure.
better things to do.
Yeah, yeah. Or we're in the environment all the time. So when it's with ourselves, we're like, I just don't even want to deal with this right now. I got to get ready for another day of arguing. So whatever. Just that's my mindset a lot of time with this my
Yeah.
personal stuff is I just check out a lot because I've had to deal with this all day long. So I don't want to argue anymore or
Yeah.
debate or negotiate anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it was attorneys that came up with happy wife, happy life.
I don't know.
They're just like, whatever, dude. A whole another one. Fair enough. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for this. Is there any closing comments, words, anything like that people really should take to heart besides re-listening to this episode over and over again?
Yeah, I think we went through a lot, right? So just realize from the asset protection side, do this all beforehand, and then it's not to avoid paying taxes. And I know then people aren't going to listen to that. So beforehand, don't try to hide assets for a divorce or to avoid paying taxes. For anyone else, feel free to jump on my website. I have a lot of free information on there, like over 90 legal articles and presentations that you can go through www.btblegal.com. Feel free to reach out to me via email, brian@btblegal.com. Like our fee rates are on there. I'm very upfront about it. We do a flat rate structures. And I do a 1 hour legal strategy consultation for people where we'll discuss your unique situation, analyze your assets and risk, develop a tailored plan of action, all under attorney-client privilege. So you're actually going to be talking to me, an attorney, a law firm, not some business trying to pretend that they're offering you legal advice. And then for us, I'm not really trying to sell you anything because, again, this is a law firm. So I'm just, here's the law, here's what works for you, helping you make your own best decision for yourself based on the law, because that's what lawyers do. And I think the biggest advice I tell for people is just eventually don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. There's only so many videos to watch, so many books to read. Eventually, you're going to have to just like jump in the pool and do something.
And you can always review it every few years.
No, yeah. But it's like a general in life. I think human nature's biggest thing is like making a decision and doing it.
Yeah.
So you read 3 or 4 books, you've read them all on that topic. Then it's just starting to repeat themselves. Like the only best way of learning in life now is just start doing it.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of just jump in. You'll learn along the way, especially in real estate, because real estate can be very forgiving. Oh my gosh, I overpaid for this property. You're not going to say that in 20 years. You're going to forget what you paid for it.
Yeah.
You're fine. You'll live.
No, exactly. The same thing in the law. Like on the law side of invest for what we're doing is when you get caught in this, I've heard this 15 different opinions. Find the law, ask them for case law, start listening to your gut, make the best decision based on the actual law that you can make. And you're going to just go from there like in anything else.
Yeah. All right, Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. And for all of those here, thank you so much for listening, watching, all of that. And Brian, maybe we'll have you on when the laws change again, because that's how politicians get paid.
Yeah, exactly. That's about protecting you from bureaucracy. That's the definition of this.
That's your job. You're a protector of bureaucracy. All right, well, thanks so much. And thank you everyone for listening. Thanks for tuning in to The Key to the City of Angels. I hope you found today's episode helpful as you navigate the world of Los Angeles real estate. Whether you're looking to buy your first home, expand your investment portfolio, or sell in this competitive market, I'm here to help you succeed. Let's connect. Visit my website or follow me on social media to learn more about how I can help you achieve your real estate goals. And if you're ready to take the next step, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to work with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Together, let's unlock your potential and make your real estate dreams a reality.